Hello, I'm about to head out on a gravel ride, really excited. It should be fun times. But before I go, I wanted to make a video. And the inspiration for this video are some comments that several of my athletes have made to me recently. And these comments are about bike fit. Now, first of all, if you have not had a bike fit in, let's say, the past 2 years or so, I really recommend you get one. Not only does the body change, your style might change and that might warrant a new fit, but the way bike fitters fit bikes is also changing, particularly with the crank arm length. You probably know that the trend is going shorter and shorter. So the first thing I want to talk about is crank arm length. I have several friends who went shorter and they didn't like it and they went back to what they had originally. I went shorter, I did like it. Recently, another one of my athletes told me she went from 170s to 165s and suddenly she could spin up the hills. She felt amazingly better. It was just like a magical change for her. So that's just a 5 millimeter difference. And she really felt it, and it made a huge difference in her riding. So I do recommend, if you have not thought about your crank arm length, go to a fitter, ask the fitter about the crank arm length. They will measure different angles on your body, and there is a certain range of like your hips and your knees that they want to put you in that is the ideal range, and shorter crank arms might put you in that range. Now, again, this is very personal. I've had athletes who like it. I've had athletes who do not like the shorter crank arm. Okay, the second thing that you can change on your bike is handlebar width. And especially for women, I would recommend really thinking about this. So women have narrower shoulders in general, and we're smaller in general. And then we also might have a little bit more flexibility this way. So that all warrants potentially a more narrow handlebar, especially on stock bikes. So a good example of this is I have an athlete. Her stock bike came with 40 centimeter bars. She changed it to 38s immediately. She rode that for about a year or two. Recently, she just changed to 36s. And interestingly, on her very first ride on these 36s, the neck pain that she had always kind of had on these longer rides disappeared. She didn't have it at all. She also felt better on the downhills. She felt like she had more control, and she liked going into the drops better. So basically everything was better for her with just a slightly more narrow handlebar. So this is also another thing to ask your fitter. Now, keep in mind, if you are changing the crank arm length, if you are changing the width of the bars, that will change your fit. So don't just slap on a bar, keep the same fit and say, hey, it's good, because you might need to change some other things on the bike. For crank arms, you're gonna have to change the saddle height. So all these things work together, and if you change saddle height, that might change the reach. And so there's an impact with any change you make. So I do recommend, if you're making changes like that in the crank arm length or the handlebar, that you go back to your fitter and you get another fit. And then the last piece of advice I'd give you is just ask people. A lot of people have been going shorter with their crank arms recently, so just ask them, how did you like it? And you might find people who are like, no, it sucked. And you might find people who say, hey, it's great. There are lots of different opinions. The more you know, the more you can make your own opinion about what might help you or might not help you.